everybody, welcome back to the channel. Again, in today's video, if you haven't found out by the title, we are going to be building a mealworm farm. Now, I already made a video on this, so make sure if you haven't checked that out, you go ahead and check it out. But this is going to be an upgraded version of that video because we found some flaws with our other setup that we had, and it wasn't necessarily that it was a bad thing to do. It's still a very similar concept, basically the same one, just on a larger scale and using some different products. But we're going to be revising that and making this even better than the other one was. So again, I appreciate you clicking on today's video. If you want to learn how to get an infinite supply of feeders for your reptiles, amphibians, whatever you may have, this is an awesome way to do it. It's very cheap, very cost effective, and it literally gives you an infinite supply of mealworms. So, make sure you watch this video till the end. If you're new, make sure you drop a like down below, consider subscribing, but let's go ahead and get into today's video. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is supplies. So in front of me here, I have a couple of supplies that we're going to need. First things first is some wire mesh. Now I'm going to put the gauging up on the screen that we got and that you'll need to use. And this is actually going to be put in the base of one of the drawers that we have in the container that we're going to use, so that when the beetles mate, the eggs, or baby tiny like literally microscopic mealworms, will actually fall through the bottom of this and into the next drawer where the mealworms are going to be. So this is super important. You need this. It's wire mesh. Pretty simple, pretty easy to get. You can have it on Amazon. I'll probably link it down below in the description. The next piece that we're going to need though, some sandpaper. Now you can actually get sandpaper or like a little block. It does not matter. You don't need this either. This is just something to kind of clean up some edges that we're going to be cutting out in one of the drawers. Again, it's not needed. I just use it because I like to clean the edges up so they're not super sharp. You don't need it though, but it's there if you want it, I guess. Anyways, next thing we're going to need is some silicone. So I actually, in my previous build, used, it was like hot glue, and it did great for a long time, but over time the hot glue does separate from the plastic. So we got some silicone. This stuff should do amazing. So this is a 100% waterproof silicone, so you need this as well as a caulking gun. So silicone gun, caulk gun, whatever you want to call it. This will obviously slide up into here just like such, and we'll be able to use this thing. So spin it upside down, and bang, we'll be able to use it. We'll need to cut the tip because this is a bottle that I've had in the past. Again, you can get this stuff from your local hardware store, or again, I'm going to have links down in the description too if you want to check it out there. Now this next item you can either get online again, or you can probably go in your house and find it. Just a knife and or a razor blade. So this is a razor blade that has a lot of like fuzz on it for some reason, but it's a razor blade. So this is one of the important items because we are going to be cutting out a plastic drawer, hopefully with one of these items. I used in my last video a Sawzall, and that can be used again, but it doesn't do the best job, and it's really hard to kind of use and not crack the actual drawer itself. It'll make sense here in just a second. And boom! Next up is the actual drawer system where our mealworms are gonna live, and beetles, and larvae, everything. So these are actual drawers that we have, and they just slide open, slide closed. And I'm gonna explain this real quick. So again, if you haven't watched my other video, I'm gonna explain how and where the actual beetles, mealworms, and larvae go. So there is one other thing that we need to get, and I'm going to talk about it here in just a second, but I wanted to talk about the actual setup before I talked about what goes into it. So these drawers themselves, in the bottom drawer, that is where our larva is going to be. So I can close that up. The beetles will obviously come from the larva. It'll make sense here in just a minute. I promise. The next drawer is our actual mealworms. In the top drawer, which we are going to be taking out, and I'll do that now. So here, and boom. Our top drawer, we're just going to leave that out by itself here for just a minute. Set that on the ground. Now this drawer is where our beetles are going to live. Now, you see a bottom on this. We're not gonna have a bottom for very long. So, we are gonna be cutting the entire base of this entire setup out because the mealworms are gonna mate, and then in the base of this sits the mealworms, and then all of the baby mealworms are gonna fall into that mealworm drawer. Starting to make sense now. I hope. You'll see in just a little bit what I'm talking about. But those are the items you're gonna need. Let's talk about the last item that you're gonna need for this entire setup. The next thing that we need are oats. Now, you can use old-fashioned or anything like that. It's typically what to go for. All they had at the store was quick cook, which is still fine. You can still use it. We've had it in the setup for a long time. The beetles and mealworms, and they'll all kind of eat this, but you're gonna obviously need to feed the mealworms and the beetles and everything too. As I'm looking over here at my fish, they need to eat too. But you're gonna need some oats. And this can be like, it doesn't really matter what it is. It can be like this, or it can be in the bag. It does not matter, but you need them. All right, so the next thing that we're gonna do here is we're gonna get our drawer, and we're gonna be cutting this entire base out. I was thinking to myself, how am I gonna do this? But I think I have an idea. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to, with my knife, I'm gonna mark out an entire base, and you're gonna see here in just a second when I cut this, you wanna leave a tiny little lip around the edge. That way the silicone can actually adhere to the plastic. So let's go ahead and do a little rough cut, and I'm gonna show you guys here in just a second what this finished product looks like. All right, so I don't know if y'all can see it super well, but I've made like a little rough cut, and this is just like an outline showing what this actually looks like here. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out and show you what I mean by like a lip. So let's get to cutting. All right, well, I'm gonna give y'all some tips and tricks because I just spent about 20 minutes making sure that I was doing this the most efficient way possible. So you actually may need some other items, like a lighter. Really what you're gonna need is like an X-Acto blade, so like a razor blade. The knife here, I tried to like heat the tip of it and actually slice it through. As you can see, it is a little bit burnt right here, and that is because I was trying to actually heat the plastic up versus the knife, and then I was trying both combos. The best way to physically do this is to actually still have both the knife and the razor blade, but the best way to do it is actually go and like mark out. So you can see here, it's really hard to tell, but there's some actual like lines here that are on this bin, and I've drawn them right around the top there. Anyways, I did both the sides first, and I cut those out using like the knife, the razor blade. It did great. As you can see, there's a hole, and I still have a good bit of that sidewall space like I was talking about. You want to have quite a bit of that so that the adhesive will actually stick well inside of this setup here. But make sure you do like a little cut, so like do an incision and just kind of trace out where you want this to be, and then take your razor blade and then just kind of stick it in like a corner. So like right up here, you would stick it in just like such, and you're just gonna kind of like drag it down all the way until the base. And then when you get to the base, stick it in the corner and drag it all the way across, leaving it as flat and like smooth as possible. You don't want to like be going like this and like trying to do it, it's gonna crack it. So you don't want to do that. You want to have like a clean motion. So make sure when you're cutting this to do like a clean motion. That is the most important thing, and to have a super thin blade. That's why you need a razor blade, not just a really sharp knife. Alright, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cut out our mesh. I've already done it here, but you want this mesh to actually sit up over top of this lip. So now that we've got this whole thing cut out, we've got our hole cut through the bottom of this, boom. We want to put the mesh on top or inside of this bin. So what we're gonna do next after we cut out our mesh is we are gonna set the mesh aside. We're gonna get our silicone. We're gonna set it all up just like this. I'm gonna cut the tip off just like this. Just like, almost like this. Bear with me. Boom. Nope, still need to go more. I used this the other day, so it still had some silicone within the tube here. I may actually need to go get... I'll be right back because I need to get something to actually cut this. Alright, we got our scissors here now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of cut this. Holy moly, this thing is tough. You know what, I might get back to the knife. Let's get this thing out of the way here. Let me go back to the old knife. Man, this thing is like really, oh, there we go. Oh! There we go though, we're good. Golden now, baby. Alright, so let's grab our bin here and let you guys see this. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the silicone here just like this, and I'm going to be globbing this stuff down, using a lot of it. Alright, so now that we've got our silicone actually put into here, what we're going to do is we're going to get our glove. So just any kind of glove, you don't really need it. But what I'm doing is I'm just going to smear it around here. And I'm going to show y'all in just a second what I mean by this. Like, bear with me for just a second. Just doing circle motions, circle motions. Alright, now I've got it all smeared down. I did little circle motions, and that does a really good job because you still want some height out of this. Because what we're doing next is we are grabbing our wire mesh that we just had, and I'm going to be placing it right on top of all this. So, place it down and just smush it real good. And I'm going to show y'all in 2 seconds what this looks like. Alright, that is what the finished product should look like. The screen is on, it is all secured down. Boom. Now, we are going to let this set for quite a while because we want it to dry. Alright, so it is hours later now and I have let all of the silicone dry. I actually ended up running an entire other bead around the entire edge. That way it is impossible for this to ever come up. So, what we're going to be doing next is we are going to be setting all of our stuff here aside. We don't need any of this anymore. And I actually didn't even end up using any of this stuff. What I do is if I'm using like any silicone or heating element, like a hot glue gun, I like to actually like bristle up a lot of the plastic. That way it adheres better to it. So if you're going to be using, instead of silicone, like hot glue or anything like that, you need this to actually like abrade up and like kind of roughen up the plastic. That way it adheres better. I tried it last time. It didn't really work so well. This I think will be the best long-term solution for having this bin. So what we're going to be doing next is we got in a little cup over here. Bear with me. We have some of our beetles. So we got probably 50 of them in here. 50 beetles. It's just a pretty decent amount. And we are going to be taking this entire thing right here. I'm going to open it up here like such. You know what? I don't feel like having to open this, so just kidding. I don't need to do it once. But let's open this up here, and we are dumping this entire thing into here. Get it around there, nice and good. Boom. Boom, just like that. Boom. Pretty freaking legitness. Pretty freaking legitness, dude. Just gotta move it all around over here, move it all around. Yep. I think that should be pretty good. That's a good little bit. So that took an entire, oh my gosh. I'm glad I'm doing this on my table. Beetle drawer is officially finito. And there's about, I would say 50 of them in here. It might not look like it, but there's still a ton on this thing. And they're all clumped up. Maybe there's like 40 or 50. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. There's a lot of them in here. And they're going to start reproducing it. They're already crawling down into this stuff down there, which is a-okay. But let's go ahead and get our other drawers. And let's get this drawer put back up in there. Let's give these guys some food at the very end. But let's get all the other drawers set up. Alright, so we got the mealworms, or the beetles, not mealworms. We got the beetles in the top drawer over here. Looking good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get each of our drawers here. And I'm going to open up our oats in the bags. I'm going to open these guys up. And I'm going to be dumping this entire bag, which is an entire one of these, into each of the drawers. So, let's go ahead and open this up. You know what? I'm going to make my life easier again. I'm going to grab my scissors. I guess material-wise, you'll need scissors at the beginning of this. It's probably a good idea, right? Right. Anyways, we got our scissors. We got this open. All we're going to do is just dump. Just like such. Whole bag into the drawer. And this is for our mealworms, so we want these guys to have a little bit more depth than our other guys did, which this definitely gives us that. So, as you can see, I'm going to push this back up in there. You can see the difference in terms of depth. You don't need much for the beetles. You need a decent amount for the mealworms, because they will actually bury down a lot more than any of the other guys will. Same thing, this is our last drawer here. This is for our pupa, not larva, pupa. I said it wrong earlier. They're pupa, not larva. Anyways, same thing here. Gonna grab our bag of oats. This does not need to be but about as thick as these guys up here. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this open just like such on the corner. Nothing crazy. And I'm gonna dump this until I think it is about good. That looks about good. So you really don't need the entire bag or an entire canister for this one. Don't need that much. And boom. Just like that. You are set up. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our mealworms from our other setup and we are going to get them up into here. So we will be right back. Alright, so since in our current setup or drawer, we have a ton of baby mealworms, and when I mean a ton, I mean a ton of baby mealworms, I am going to be dumping this entire drawer because I cannot see the actual baby mealworms because they are so small. I am going to be dumping this entire thing into here. So, I'm taking what I have here, and actually, I found a beetle. Let's put the beetle in the top. Beetle! Put him up here. Boom. There you go, little guy. Alright. Done a pretty good job of sorting these for now. But I'm dumping all of these. So there's a ton of mealworms in here. You really can't see them all because they're all buried, but there's a ton of them. I don't know if y'all can see the movement or not. I'm not moving this at all. They're all just, there's so many of them in here. Anyways, I'm dumping all of these into the second drawer here. Just like that. And what I want you guys to see, no, they actually all came out pretty good. But what I want you to see is this was all mealworms, or not mealworms, it was all oats before. It's literally like a fine powder now. So these guys eat the oats. That's what they do. So there are a ton of mealworms in this. A ton. So all different sizes, but this is going to be the perfect setup size-wise because we were overpopulating, holy dust, we were overpopulating this tiny little setup that we had. So I'm going to set this all aside now. I don't think there should be much left in here, but this is our pupa drawer. I'm just going to, actually there's some tiny mealworms in there too. They must have fallen through or climbed over. I don't know what happened. A lot of times what was happening is whenever I opened this up, if like the bottom drawer's open too, because this huge gap was in there, they were just falling through. So a lot of them ended up getting in drawers they shouldn't be in, but that's okay. I'm going to close this up. And in our last drawer here, I'm just going to take this whole drawer out, just like this, pop it, boom. And same thing with this. I am going to be dumping this entire drawer into here, and you can see a little pupa right there and a ton of little baby mealworms. So this is not a, you know, well, this should be a pretty much dummy proof setup, but you know, the last one wasn't because it obviously broke and didn't work right. But it does an amazing job at literally giving you infinite mealworms. And when I say infinite mealworms, we started out with like a couple hundred, and I feed my animals hundreds of these a week. Hundreds. So a lot of the mealworms or beetles have died just because they're so old, but they repopulate. They reproduce so fast, it is not even funny. So like, literally when I say this, it's really hard to tell, but there are literally like microscopic mealworms in here. And there's so many of them. And they get huge. I mean, they get big. This isn't even really that big a one. Oh, this is a bigger one. This is a bigger one. But I mean, that's a good sized mealworm. And you don't have to pay for them ever again. Literally ever again. So, all of this itself, we got it like, I think we got this whole drawer set up here at Michael's. It's not that much money. But I mean, it's a pretty big difference. Pretty clear difference from this huge giant setup right here to that. So it is a huge upgrade, and yeah, these guys should absolutely thrive. So I'm gonna get some food for these guys, but that is pretty much gonna end this video. Simple little setup, but it literally gives you an infinite amount of mealworms, which is what we're going after. And you may be wondering to yourself too, like, what do these guys even eat? How do they stay alive? Very simple. You grab some greens, just like this, and you literally just set it in there, just like that. And because these guys are really hungry, I'm gonna set in 2. And this will literally be gone in the morning, or in a couple hours. They're already mating in the back. Sweet. But really simple, guys. And yeah, you just feed these guys. Same thing with the mealworm drawer. Feed them. And then obviously there are some mealworms down here too, so I might as well just feed them. So just throw in some of these greens, just like that. Nothing crazy for this drawer because it's mainly just pupa. But we'll throw in some more for the mealworms. There's only a couple little tiny pieces of lettuce left in this bag, or greens left in this bag, and let's just give it all to him. Boom. Just like that. And we have a successful mealworm farm. Alright guys, well I appreciate you clicking on today's video. If you made it here till the end, make sure you drop a like down below, consider subscribing. I hope you can build this setup yourself. It is super simple to do, super easy and very cost effective, and saves you a ton of money a year, especially if you have multiple reptiles or multiple amphibians that you feed mealworms to. You can do this setup with quite a bit of size variances, you know, depending on how many animals you have that you're feeding. Maybe you don't need a setup as big as mine. For me, I feed a lot of animals. We have over 50 reptiles and amphibians, way more than 50 in our household, so they eat a lot every week. And this is just a starting colony. So this is not a huge colony to start with, but what you're gonna get to start is just the mealworm. So you're probably not gonna have the beetles to start with. So Again, this is a colony that I already had before that I'm now switching to a bigger setup. But if you're starting out new, I always suggest, you know, if you have like 5 or less reptiles or amphibians in your household, go to the store, pick up 200 to 300 mealworms, and put them in that middle drawer and continue to feed them. Eventually, they're going to turn into the pupa, the larva, and then they're going to turn into the beetles. So just make sure that you're moving them into different drawers as time goes on, because these guys, if not given enough food, will cannibalize one another. I haven't had that issue too much, but it can happen. I've heard of people having it happen to them, so just make sure you're cautious with that. But give it some time for this colony to truly thrive and truly set up before you just start taking and taking and taking from it. It is super important that it actually sets itself up for success, so that in the future, like we do have now, a constant, continuous flow of endless amounts of mealworms. But if you guys enjoyed this content, make sure you drop a like down below. Consider subscribing. Any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments. But I hope to see you in the next one, guys. Peace.